Okay, so the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water released the National Waste and Resource Recovery report in December last year. I'm the lead author. I put this complicated Sankey diagram up there at the beginning. This is a sort of a master overview of flows of waste materials in Australia. Now, you won't be able to see it here, obviously, but I'm putting it there to show you it's worth a look. It's looking at it from this tonnage basis is really something helpful. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I got lots of clicks here. It's going to be difficult. So the report is presented online. I've given you a link for it there. Previously, we've done it like as a PDF document. Now they're translating it to an online thing, including with interactive charts and diagrams. So it's pretty handy. You can click on what year you're into, what material, what source streams, what jurisdictions, etc., etc. So worth a look from that perspective. Oh, come on, clickies. No, it's not doing more. Thank you. Screwed it up, my fault. So the data set is accessible on the same page. So that database, so all the numbers going back to 2006-07, you can find on that page, and you can do your own analysis of it. With explorable data viewers linked to the online text. The report focuses 2022-23, so a little bit old, with trends back to 2016-17. It's old because we have to wait for the states and territories, and the states and territories have to wait for the slowest reporter, or the one they're most suspicious about, until they get the numbers right, then they hand it on to us, so it takes a while. It's worth saying, before we jump into the numbers, just think about the weaknesses of it. We are not presenting this as saying it's absolutely perfect to the nearest kilogram. Data is categorized in different ways by states and territories, which is really why they have to get some geek in to sort it out for them. Composition of waste to landfill is from periodic audits. So when we're saying the recovery rate of metals, for example, we are making an assumption about how much metals goes into landfill, which we get from audits. They are snapshots. They're pretty good snapshots. I've looked at a whole bunch of them. They're surprisingly consistent, but it's still, that is a bit of a weakness. And jurisdictional data systems focus on the materials that they manage. But when it goes across borders, we're going to say, oh yeah, but where did it come from? And we have to take it back and give it back to them. So there's a fair bit of argy-bargy in that way. It's guided by an informal standard that we developed a few years ago, and this picks up on what Suzanne's saying. It's our view that if you're going to have harmonization of policy, you first of all have to have harmonization of language. It's hard to make policy consistent if people are calling things different things, if their categories overlap and are not identical. So we've tried to make the standard to not only describe what we're doing, but also say to the states and territories, can you please also move in this direction when you get the chance? And many of them have. I might say that Tasmania's recent review, they describe this as the bedrock. So it is useful in that way. Here's the process. So you can see industries reporting to the states and territories, and then the states and territories report to the feds. There's also some supplementary data from industry surveys and so on, for example, of biosolids and of plastics. That all goes into two different workbooks. These are two separate processes, one for hazardous and one for non-hazardous waste. In Microsoft Excel, with the deliberate intention to keep it reasonably transparent, because most people have got somebody in their organization. It used to be, you give it to New South Wales, we're saying, what the hell have you been doing with our data? Well, we can show them now, they can follow what we're doing with their data. And I should say it's got really good with states and territories these days, and they really buy into this and help us through with it, and particularly New South Wales this year. There's a whole bunch of manipulations then, conversions, gap filling, and so on, and that leads to the National Waste and Resource Recovery Database, as I said, is online, and the interactive data viewers, and this report. Okay, let's jump into some numbers. So we'll start with waste generation in Australia 2022-23 by material categories, and we're looking at millions of tonnes here. The total amount, 75.6 million tonnes, or 2.88 tonnes per person. And I'm referencing here underneath the baseline year of the National Waste Policy Action Plan targets, 16-17. It was 70 million tonnes then, or almost the same per capita. Now, the target is a 10% reduction by 2030, so it ain't going all that well at the moment, you'd have to say. Building and demolition materials been the biggest one. You'll see ash at the top. Now, most states and territories don't include that, but the feds do. This is coal ash, which is going to be declining anyway. Here we are looking at the trend then. As you can see, it's not increased by all that much, and let's switch that on because the target is tonnes per capita, and you can see on that basis it's pretty much identical, no change over time. But if we break that up then looking at tonnes per capita by stream, you can see different stories. Municipal waste going down a little bit, and construction and demolition waste going up. This is obviously big amounts, and we're including here contaminated soils, and there's often very large amounts of those. So you get a big project and that make a big spike in it. So much so Victoria has taken its waste reduction targets, taken construction and demolition waste out because it's so all over the place, and we don't want to say, no more roads for you. Commercial and industrial waste going down, but that's the one that includes ash. So when we take ash out and we just look at what we call the core waste managed by the waste industry or resource recovery industry, bit of a story there, yeah, going up, going down, going back up again. Okay, now I've got to be quick here, so I won't dwell on some of these things. Recycling and waste reuse 2022-23 is the next story after waste generation. Waste reuse is a Commonwealth thing, and they're basically wanting, the Commonwealth has been quite keen on trying to drag more and more things in there. And waste reuse is really about stuff that is recovered, but it isn't processed. And they don't want to call that recycling. Tip shops, for example. So they want to call that waste reuse. So that means stuff that's been in a waste and resource recovery facility but was not processed. It would include contaminated soil that's reused from spoil depots, which they have in South Australia. So the biggest one here, though, is building and demolition materials, easily the biggest, and organics, then ash, etc., etc. Material recovery facilities receive about 2 million tonnes out of this lot, of which about 21% ended up in material. A fair bit of this material is exported, including metals, 43% of metals and 40% of paper and cardboard. There's the totals, 47.6 million tonnes, or 1.81 per capita. In 2016, it was less tonnes and it was less per capita. So it's moving in the right direction, but I don't think we're heading to 80% at this rate. We will have to change that. We'll have to go faster. Oops, jumped twice there. Here's the trend, 2016, and now we're going in millions of tonnes, not per capita, because it's the basis of the target, so you can see it's climbed a fair bit. And let's break that down again. And the biggest climber is construction and demolition waste. We're getting better at that, from 17 up to 24 million tonnes. Municipal waste climbing a bit. You might be surprised at how little that is, given all the organics collection systems that have unfolded across the country. I think we're going to see more of that. Remember, this is 22-23, and things are accelerating with FOGO fairly quickly across the country. The one that you'd have to say, oh, what's that, is C&I waste there. Now, I'm going to put the core component in. So this is taking the ash out, so maybe we focus on that one. 12 million tons to 12 million tons. Going up a bit, going down a bit, going back up again a little bit. But it's not really a very happy story with C&I waste. I think that's the trouble stream in a way. That's the challenge stream, it seems to me. Okay, so let's go on to energy recovery next. Now, obviously, that's a lot smaller, but one thing with the Commonwealth reporting system, they include waste that generates methane in landfills where that methane is captured and used for making electricity. Now, some people scratch their heads on that, but there's a reasonable argument for it, really, but it does mean that some of the material that goes into landfill under the Commonwealth system is recovered. So that's the bulk of it, but there's also some thermal energy from waste, there's some anaerobic digestion, and increasingly the generation of waste-derived fuels, some of which are exported, but some of which are used in cement kilns. So you can see that it's commercial and industrial waste where that's increasing the most. The numbers there, we're talking 2.3 million tonnes, 88 kilograms per capita, and it was not much different in 2016-17. I'll just take a little diversion here because it sort of twigs into this. This is greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector since 1990, or 1890 to 21-22, the most recent figures. Now, when I say emissions from waste, it doesn't include the emissions from processing, like electricity used or gas used or anything. That's counted for in other sectors. This is the end of the pipe system that we use for the Kyoto Protocol reporting or the Paris Agreement. So this covers methane from landfills, incineration of plastics, and a little bit of composting methane and nitrous oxide. The bulk of it, though, is landfill, and you can see that it is declined significantly, and most of that is to do with landfill gas collection. Let's not underestimate the contribution of that industry. So what we've got there, 10.9 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent in the 1989-90. 17.2 then, and it's gone down to 10.9. Okay, so now we'll move on to waste disposal. In Australia, 22-23, again in millions of tonnes. And look at that, isn't it disappointing? Organics is the biggest category still, after all that effort, and it's the worst one. So we've still got a lot of work to do there on getting organic materials out of landfill. And that doesn't include paper and cardboard at the bottom, which is also organic in a way. Well, in a very clear way. Plastics too, sometimes people call it organic, but we're not covering those here. We're using the waste sector definition of organics. Ash is another big one. That is going to be declining because of coal is closing down. The total amount then, 25.7 million tonnes, almost a tonne per capita. In 2016-17, though, it was a fair bit more on a per capita basis. So a bit of a fall, and let's have a look at that trend again using the same thing, millions of tonnes by stream, and you can see construction and demolition waste going down, so matching that improved recovery rate for those materials. Municipal waste, pretty much flat. Not much change there. Commercial and industrial waste as well, pretty much the same. But let's take the ash out. And just have a look at that line there. There we go. So in the core C&I waste, excluding ash, we have an increase in waste disposal. So again, highlighting that C&I is probably our biggest challenge. Okay, now because of this a different thing that the feds do on landfill, we sometimes get people complaining and saying, well, but we don't know what goes to landfill. So here we have it. It's not much different from the slide we've just had a look at there. You can see construction and demolition waste going down, municipal waste roughly flat, and C&I starting to rise. Okay, I'm going to show you now recovery rates by jurisdiction. This is the bit that the states and territories leaf to as soon as this report comes out. Australia's average at the top, 66% recovery rate. and the leader of the pack is South Australia. That little blue bit at the top is the waste reuse, and that's because they have this system in South Australia for storing contaminated soils for potential use without processing when they get a suitable thing. So this is the stuff coming out of those facilities. New South Wales, since we're here, up 73%, second alongside the ACT. Victoria gets a bit of a bum rap here because their ash from brown coal is not used for recycling, so that's a bit of a backward step for them. Western Australia has had significant increases over the last few years, and Tasmania too. If we look at that by stream, construction and demolition waste, the highest recovery rate. C&I, the next one, and municipal at the bottom. That blob at the top is showing how much organics go to landfill from municipal waste and is used for energy recovery by the landfill gas collectors. All of them, though, over 50%, and that's an improvement from the last time I stood here. I'm going to show you now materials, and I'm not saying recovery rate here, I'm talking management. So rather than saying what the fate is, so because of that tangle with landfills and so on, and also with hazardous waste treatment, the fate of that varies. So now I'm just showing where it goes. So we've got this still gives us a pretty clear idea of what happens to these materials. You can see building and demolition materials. The recycling is that funny color. We had problems with the colors, accessibility rules made us use these not very intuitive colors. So recycling is of building and demolition materials is high and increasing. Glass, organics, metals, all of these things, the recovery rates remaining reasonably constant. Paper and cardboard too, and you can see paper and cardboard declining in society as digitization kicks it out the window. We don't need as much of it anymore. Ash also slowly declining there, you can see in the top left-hand corner. And then we've got the two disaster stories with textiles and plastics, where we really have a long journey to go and have not really made an awful lot of progress when it comes to the actual data. All right, my last slide then is local government collections. So there's a whole chapter on that, and it's actually one thing I wish I'd included actually is to show the increase in FOGO. But you do get a bit of an idea of that from this chart. Now this is just curbside collections. It's not hard waste, it's not drop-off, it's not litter bins and all the rest of it. So you can see garbage, gone down a little bit, but not an awful lot of change there. Dry recycling, I called it that because it's not all commingled. There's some separate newsprint or paper collections in Sydney and glass in Victoria. So we'll call it dry recycling. Those quantities are going down. There's two reasons for that. One is disappearing paper and so on, digitalisation, lighter materials, and the other is container deposit schemes, which are sort of filching a little bit of that material that used to go in the bins. But organics there, you can see, is rising and overtook in quantity dry recycling a couple of years ago, and we'd expect that to be going up even stronger. The rest of it is, of course, the street litter bins and all the rest of it, which is about a couple of million tonnes on the top. Right, and I think that covers everything I was going to show to you. I hope that was informative.
Thank you, Joe. So we've got a couple of questions here. We've got time for one more before we take a break. So I'll just hand that to Joe, and if you just have a look at the top one. So some of the thanks for the upvoting quickly. So from a purely data analytics perspective, will we meet any state or federal targets at the current trajectory? Would you suggest faster action is needed from a purely data perspective?
From a purely data perspective, yes, clearly we're not going to meet any of those targets. If we just continue like that, we are not going to hit them. So, yeah, there needs to be an acceleration. With some of them, we come a bit close, I think, but no.
Great. Well, let's join our hands together. Thanks, Joe. All right, so we're now about to break for morning tea. Just like to say thank you to our tea break sponsor, Cleanaway.